Hey everybody. That was a little loud. That was a little loud. Happy Tech Week.
Yay.
Excited to see you all. Yes, it is Monday of Tech Week. So welcome to the Future of Tech Talent in the Age of AI, hosted by Rich and Twill. Really grateful for our sponsors and event planners for the amazing food and drinks. I'm Lori. I'm an investor at Bloomberg Beta, and I'm really excited to moderate this conversation. It is going to be a lot of fun. I can't help but make every conversation real talk and fun and no corporate facade here. So to get started, I think we should do a round of introductions, but actually start with a raise of hands from you all to understand who's in the room. So raise your hand if this is your first Tech Week event. Okay, nice. I went to one this morning, so. Okay, raise your hand if you're hiring on your team. Okay, bleak. Raise your hand if, well, maybe no one will raise their hand for this, but if you're looking for a job. Okay, honesty, we love. Raise your hand if you're feeling worried about AI in relation to work. Here we go, honesty. What about curiosity? Who's feeling curious about AI? Awesome, really glad you're here. And who's excited to get the panel started? Okay, so I'm gonna introduce our panelists, and then they are each gonna go one at a time and tell us about the worst or funniest interview experience they've ever had, so we can get to know them a little as people. So first we have Michelle. She's the founder and CEO of Twill. We are proud investors in Twill and in Rich. Prior to that, she ran her own executive search firm for 6 years and worked in media for a bunch of different media companies, AOL, Disney, NBC prior to that. Then we have Jen. Jen is the VP of design at Patreon, and she has done design at a lot of places you've heard of: Shopify, Huge, Google Creative Lab. And then lastly, we have Sai, who is an ed tech extraordinaire. He's head of product at Guidepoint, and before that, led product at Kaplan and Pearson. And he may or may not be writing a book. Ooh. Okay, see, boring stuff out of the way. Now, Michelle, take us away. What is your funniest interview story?
Okay, mine is very inappropriate, but I'm going to share it. And I'm not going to name the company, but we did have a company that was interviewing for several positions, and we heard from the candidate that when he or she joined the Zoom call, the hiring manager hopped on and said, "I have no idea why I'm here or what I'm interviewing for, so let me share my screen and we'll watch a Netflix show."
What?
And that's real, like in the last year. So that's not what you should do if you don't know what you're hiring for. There are other things you can do, but.
Oh my gosh, that's awful. Jen?
Mine is embarrassing and funny. Well, I find it funny now. I've had several, but this was the one I had the most takeaway from. Okay, microphone okay. I will name the company. So I had.
Take it off. Take that off. Let's just speak loudly.
Yeah. I had an opportunity to interview with Instagram. And at the time, I was super happy with the job I had. And the Instagram recruiter, it wasn't a recruiter, it was one of their directors of design. And he approached me pretty aggressively. And so I was very confident at the time. I was like, oh, sure, I'll come in and interview with Instagram. And I had some friends who worked there too. And he's like, come in. I learned very quickly not to be arrogant. So I came in, had put together a little portfolio the night before. And just, I don't really want this job, so I'll go in and just socially chat. And the first conversation was with somebody I knew, and it was a catch up. I just had a baby, she just had a baby, and I was like, oh, everything's great. And then they sent in the woman who was really gonna interview me, and she interviewed me. And I was like, look, and couldn't answer any real questions. And at one point I was stumbling through the sad little thing I prepared. And she was like, well, what was the user problem? And I was like, what's the user problem? As a user experience designer, that is like, you need to be able to answer that question. And I walked out of there so humiliated and just thinking, oh my gosh, I will never go into an interview, even a job that I don't want, and do this because it's Instagram. Like, I might want to work there someday. And I felt, one, humbled and embarrassed. And I never, even for jobs that I was pseudo interested in, like, I learned, like, you prep, you really prep, you thoroughly understand what you're going in for, and be buttoned up. And so I have not made that mistake again. It was still embarrassing.
I think this might work. Let's see. So I think I can beat that, but usually what I try to do with my interviews is I try to like move people off the spot a little bit. So my typical question for product managers is like, design a sprinkler system or something a little bit out of the way. Most people like, so what I expect for people to do is to then like be shocked a little bit and then slowly find their bearings. There's one time a person actually cried in the interview because she felt like I was kind of like screwing her a little bit, like, are you serious about the job? Are you going to give me like, so she got really like, I didn't know how to handle that because, you know, I didn't want to get in trouble or anything like that, but it was pretty common for me to do, like, and then I had to like sort of calm her down. So the rest of my interview was actually like making her like, and so HR complaints, but from that point on, I started asking that question with a little bit more, like, you know, something relevant to the job maybe, but, you know, so.
So you asked about a sprinkler system and you got waterworks.
Wow.
I think you didn't tell me that before. It's all up here. Those are awesome stories. Mine was when I was an intern, or I was interviewing for an internship at college, and I aced the interview. And at the end, the interviewer, a very nice guy, was like, "So, what do you like to do for fun?" And all my like preparedness was like, and I was like, "Travel." And I was 18 years old or 19 years old. He was like, "Okay, travel, sure." And when I got the job, he eventually came up to me and was like, "Are you the girl that said travel?" And I was like, "I'm so embarrassed." He was like, "Yeah, that was a horrible answer, but otherwise you were awesome." Okay, so let's get to our conversation. So just starting out kind of with a general question that I think a lot of folks consider whether or not they're actively job hunting or not. With so many applicants on the market right now, it feels harder and harder to stand out, especially because in some industries like design, you know, you have the artistic, creative elements, but for most jobs, there's not a ton you can do to be different from everyone else. So how do you guys think about standing out when you're a candidate?
Again, so I have this thing with my team where I sort of encourage everybody to sort of look at their own superpowers and then own it. So, you know, human nature is that when you're good at something, you don't always like sort of think of it as anything big, but you always look at others and, you know, you exalt that. So I think it's important to be who you are and actually wear your personality a little bit on your profile. Like if you've done some fun stuff, like travel, definitely talk about it. And actually, you know, it's a good thing because people want to see some personality. They see a lot of resumes on a daily basis. So I think being who you are and being like sort of proud about it is good. So I think, you know, that's what I would encourage.
What's your superpower?
I think empathy. Yeah, I would say.
Love that.
I'd say when it comes to standing out, there's two levels of that. There's standing out when you're just trying to get an interview, and then there's standing out in an interview, and those are different. We do use AI to help us comb through, you know, applicants and kind of source a few of the key ones that we want to follow up with. And so, and then I've sent basically our recruiter, our talent team will pull together a bunch of different profiles and portfolios for me to review, and then all of that sent to me. I look at LinkedIn profiles, I scan through portfolios. The things that I look for when I'm just looking at black and white or, you know, a portfolio are, because Patreon is a startup, we're 12 years in, a Series F. We source from big tech, but we also look for a lot of people who have startup experience. And so I'm really looking for people that have a diverse background. If you've only ever worked at Google, Spotify, Shopify, these big tech companies, we've found that people don't typically do great at Patreon because it's a little more ad hoc, less processed, certainly less resources than you're going to have at those companies. But if you're just straight out of startups, that can be tough too, because we are more advanced, we're trying to move really quickly, and we do need people with a really high craft bar. And so I try to look for portfolios that have a little bit of both, and where I can say, oh, like, interesting, they've did a little bit of this, and they've experienced some chaos, but they also have experienced really corporate structures and how difficult it is to move things when you've got tons of teams that are trying to coordinate. So I look for people who kind of navigated and built a career that seems personalized and exploratory versus just, I locked in and just did this for a decade.
Awesome. Michelle?
So I would say, wow, it's very loud. When you want to get an interview, the best route, if you're kind of like in a sea of applicants, is to find someone that can recommend you for the position. That's like number one, whether internal or they just happen to know the hiring manager, like, hey, you know, Michelle applied for this position, you should look up her resume. And then when you're in the interview process, we always recommend doing proactive exercises after you met with the hiring manager. Typically, you can ask them, like, what does success look like within 90 days? And they'll give you, like, oh, I'm looking for this problem to be solved or XYZ to be solved for. Solve it. Like, spend 2 hours, send your thoughts, and that typically makes you stand out.
It's so true. And nobody does that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, nobody sends thank you notes, but then nobody does that. So that really is really great advice. Okay, so continuing on how people think about their process of applying, do you guys have any thoughts around the strategy that folks should take? I'm thinking especially in the context right now of job descriptions are AI generated. You go through and comb through resumes using AI. Their peers who are applying for the jobs are using some AI tools to like submit all their job applications. How do you think that folks should think about their strategy now in the context of that?
Don't use AI to apply to jobs, because every single hiring manager knows, and we screen for it, and we'll screen candidates out if they use AI in the wrong way, meaning they've just put their resume in ChatGPT and asked to customize it to a JD. Many companies.
How can you tell?
Many companies will put keywords in JDs, like deep in the text, that have nothing to do with the job. We've seen like frog, banana, gorilla, like just random things. And so if you ask ChatGPT to customize your resume to this JD, the word gorilla or banana or frog will appear somewhere. And typically you're not probably going to screen the entire resume that ChatGPT provided for you. So companies will like literally pull it up and do a keyword search for these AI buzzwords, they call them, and they'll screen you out. So you can use AI to your advantage, but I would just be very careful about using it to mass apply to JDs that you're, you know, maybe not as interested in or qualified for.
Yeah, the way I look at it is that it's not a good idea to use AI to apply for that job. Even if it's an AI company, they actually specifically say don't use AI, which is kind of ironic, but what you want to do is to pre-work with AI to say, okay, how many versions of my resume do I need to have for the kinds of things I want to do? And then have that as a template, and then sort of work with AI to sort of build up the best sort of resume. Because sometimes you do a lot of things and like you want certain things to stand out in a particular job, right? And so work a little bit ahead, but then when you're doing that actual application, take the right resume and then do the whole thing, you know, sort of human way, I guess.
I mean, my experience hiring designers is so humanist in the way that we're trying to connect with people that, I mean, it depends on which level you're at. You know, if you're early career, that's a very different approach than if you're more mid or late career. I've not come across anybody using AI in terms of like, because we don't really like read detailed resumes. Most of what we're looking at is portfolios and a visual representation of your work. Certainly recommendations count for a lot. I'm very impressed with people who show up to events. You know, Patreo has a lot of events with creators, and having someone that is showing up either online or in person to participate in discussions that Patreo is having helps us kind of build an affiliation and understanding of that individual. So that's a great way to be noticed. When I was looking for a job, after I left Shopify, I took a few months off to figure out what I wanted to do. And I just lit up everybody's LinkedIn and just was like, what are all the opportunities that I'm aware of? I reached out to recruiters directly. That's actually how I got the job at Patreon, is I just reached out to the VP of Talent in addition to like applying for everything else, and was just, I'm interested in what y'all are doing, and probably emailed like 6 other people at the company. Not everybody replied, but just trying to triangulate on an opportunity and learn as much about it as possible. And sometimes going as far as to like, I read this interesting article or this thing I thought would be interesting and just wanted to put this on Patreon's radar. Like that's a very bold move. Patreon probably knows about those things that are happening in the world, but showing that you are really attuned to what the company might be caring about and you have a point of view about it is a really nice way to signal that you might have value to add.
Yeah, so as a startup investor, obviously we're looking at new applications of AI every day. And I do think that for candidates, there's a lot of ways to use AI as a superpower, like you said, rather than as a cheater, like for using it in the way it wasn't intended. So for example, there's a startup that I love using, we're not investors, called Happenstance, and it lets you search across your network using plain text. So you could search like senior executives in healthcare, and you can upload your LinkedIn connections, your Twitter connections, and you can combine with your friends or colleagues and search across them just in plain search, which can be super helpful in figuring out like who exactly to network with. And then I know a lot of folks who use ChatGPT to practice interviewing, like literally using the audio mode to go back and forth. Totally ethical, positive way of using it. And then, you know, when you're getting into comp negotiations or you're weighing a few different jobs, like these AI tools are awesome for advice. So I think there's a lot of ways to use it to like enhance what we all have instead of trying to literally have it replace what we're supposed to do. So I love all those ideas. Okay, awesome. So topic that I actually think a lot about and kind of scares me is for the younger folks who are just entering the workforce. It's kind of a scary time. There's less jobs. Folks, you know, CEOs are sharing how they want everything to be automated with AI, and they're stepping away from junior talent. But young people still need to work and they still need to learn. So how do you think they should approach entering this job market?
I think it's no doubt it's a tough market. The way I look at it always, like first focus on the mindset before you even get the skills and the tools. Sometimes we think about the tools, the database to do and things like that. And I think now the way I see the next 5 years go is that the jobs that we believe are jobs will slowly start to transform into different jobs that will probably have more superpowers to your point, like more skills that we'll have to use. So if people who are coming into the workforce are really flexible and have the mindset of I'm doing whatever and get to that spot, I think that's the place. In some ways, there is an advantage to being young in the workforce because you are not as expensive as some of the people who are middle managers. And I think there is as people start to manage more people, there is also like this like replaceability because you want more player coaches, less sort of just people who are managing. So I do think that for people who are entering the workforce, the fact that they are less expensive is a good thing. But I think you have to be very flexible with the kind of jobs that you're willing to take on, what you want to learn, and then how you kind of bring on top of it. So it's more like the mindset thing for me. And when I interview, I always look for people who are flexible with their thoughts, like, if you challenge them, how do they sort of like work around that? And because nobody knows what 5 years from now is going to look like, so you just have to be really, really adaptable. So if you can show that, then I think you will be able to.
Any thoughts? I know we talked about this a little before, but about those middle managers too. Like how you're pointing out that they are more expensive and getting laid off.
I mean, get down to like doing more stuff. I think
do more stuff.
Back to your
That's the quote of the night.
Go back to your core skills, like, do more projects, because what happens sometimes, like you just get so out of touch with what was like the core skill that the tools have moved so fast, and sometimes people can feel a little like fish out of water, like, because I used to work in Photoshop, now what's something else, and then you're like so far away from what you think is like your skill set. So I think it is a, yeah, want to get back into the game.
I really agree with your earlier point about like thinking about what your superpower is, like, and like your core superpower. Are you an analytical person? Are you good with people? Are you good at persuasion and sales? Good storyteller? Because those are the things that you can take to so many different areas. And just as a personal anecdote, I studied architecture. I graduated with a master's in architecture, and it was at a time where AutoCAD had already taken over. Actually, AutoCAD had already taken over for a while, so nobody was doing mainline drafting anymore. And mainline drafting, I don't even know the term for it. And so that used to be the craft of architects, and was the actual drawing itself. And I went to school, and everything was on the computer. And I graduated realizing that I probably wasn't going, that was not my super skill, and that I probably was, because architecture has changed so much, you have to be exceptional as a designer to be able to really make a living as an architect. And I was like, I'm probably not going to be that good of an architect. But the skill set that I had was understanding how to put together a narrative, a storyboard, and what I started to realize is that actually translated well to user experience design, which is about frameworks and helping people put together like a narrative and a user journey. So you just kind of keep iterating and figuring out what you enjoy, what you're good at, and then find the right opportunity space to match that core skill set.
I would say start building relationships while you're in school with people that you think are inspirational or could help you in some way. And then I'm like the least technical person out there. So if I can do this, I think pretty much anyone can. But you know, when you're just entering the workforce, I'd say build something. There are so many tools out there that allow you to build it. Like I just built an invoice dashboard thing through Replit in like 20 minutes. And I was like, oh wow, this works. And I had no idea what the code was saying, but we now have an invoice dashboard instead of paying an engineer like a couple $1,000s to do it. So I'd say, like, to your points, figure out what you're passionate about or what you think you like and build something and share it with a potential mentor and ask for 20 minutes on LinkedIn. Like, you'd be surprised how far you can get.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, not to be a shill, but Enrich is really great for that, for like getting these curated communities. It is hard when you reach out to people cold. So awesome, great advice.
Meeting and talking to people and like sometimes the oddest thing that you never thought of like as a big thing will show up as like you said, it's that, you know, what makes you good at your job may not be about like just the skills that you have for the job, but it's like the weird thing you learn in school, you know, in a summer class or something like that that shows up. But it's like still being open to recognizing that and then bringing it into like the key thing. So that's going to become more and more like what's unique about you.
I also don't think AI can replace branding and design, at least not yet. Like, content kind of sucks through AI for the majority. So I think if you have like a really strong storytelling, you can use that to your advantage.
I saw somebody reply to a VC's tweet today being like, respectfully, I can tell you wrote this with AI, so you should probably work on that. And he was like, thank you for the feedback. Okay, awesome. Let's open it up to questions. Anybody have any things that they want to bring up? And do we have mics? Maybe I'll just do mine.
I'm just curious how you are enabling your current teams to leverage AI in the workplace.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Lauren. I am a chief of staff at Okta.
So I think, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say Patreon has a kind of unique approach into this because, so I used to work at Shopify, and if anybody was paying attention to Shopify, Toby Luca put out an open letter saying everybody has to use AI, which is actually, I think, very appropriate for Shopify. Patreon has an interesting position because we are highly encouraging, and in some places mandating that parts of our company really experiment and leverage AI. As the head of the design and research team, I'm very much enthusiastic about my team, and they're very excited about a lot of ways to use it, both for productivity, but also just creativity, experimentation. But Patreon represents creators, and it is a difficult area for creators. It's a difficult moment. Creators are very concerned and asking Patreon, what are you going to do to protect our creative work? What if people are, generating new creativity on top of ours? We very much represent and stand for compensating people for their creative output. So we're thoughtful about how we're using it in terms of our company and the way that we want to advance our productivity and experimentation. We have guidelines for how we allow people to publish and profit off of AI-generated work on our platform and how it has to be attributed to certain users. So in terms of our overall company message and what we stand for, we're trying to really make sure we get it right, because it's not just all-out celebration. It really risks the livelihood of a lot of creative people.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a little bit of a tricky thing, because the moment you expose people to that, there is a rabbit hole that people get into that you have to be careful about. So the book that I'm working on, part of what I talk about is like, okay, you have to go through this journey of trust with AI. So you start with workers. So use AI in just right. So one of the life hacks that I used to do is like, I was terrible at taking whiteboards and then digitizing them. So now what I do is I take pictures and I make the AI digitize my whiteboards. And then there are like things like that you can do that are low stakes, that are just like solving like a busy work problem that people can start gain some productivity. And then over time, what people can see is like you use your AI as an associate PM, like make the AI. You've written a one-pager now, let it do some like story writing, but then you have to make sure that they are involved in the reading and the refining and stuff like that. But I think it's because everybody is in a different place with their trust with AI, and probably rightfully so. So based on that, I would sort of find a way for them to like start to do a thing. One thing that has been super helpful for me with execs is storytelling. So, we work in this environment where it's really difficult to like make executives sort of see what the vision is. So I just build it and show it to them. So that's like been a big life hack for me, because otherwise like it would have to go through a lot of like sort of design and iteration and all that. And definitely the things that I do with Replit or Lovable don't have this sort of level of polish, but I can tell my story. And then immediately sort of like then connect, and then someone who's actually way more qualified will end up building it. But I think that has helped a lot in so whatever it takes for you to sort of like cross a chasm or like to fill up that gap, I think you can use it.
How big is your team?
Big.
So Twill is a team of 6. And while we don't force anyone to use AI, one of the first things that we did, and you can do this with teams of any size, is just look at what tasks are the most time consuming and that you would actually hire like an admin for or engineer support person for. And basically, AI makes everything a lot faster, but that's kind of like a first step.
Amy, here we go. Hi, I'm Sandhya and I'm with ECA Partners. We're an executive search firm that does a lot of hiring for, I would say, VP to C-suite investor-backed companies. So in terms of tech talent, are you seeing a difference in how people are screening for talent? What are you looking for in terms of skills growth as we're looking at AI, especially in a landscape where it's adapting so quickly?
I'd say we work with startups and we work with enterprise, so like the Googles and the Rokus of the world. We're seeing soft skills become a lot more important than the tech stack, because a lot of people have the tech stack. And so the soft skills are becoming increasingly more important. I'd say like a 70-30% ratio sometimes.
Yeah, I'll say like I look for like intellectual flexibility. Sometimes people who've done stuff for a bit, they get really caught in the lane that they're in, and they want to sort of like grow through that. And I look for people who are willing to learn, and when they come to a new place, because every place has its own like interestingness, right? So I think being who can come in and kind of see what the place is and then adapt and then kind of like grow from there. Of course, with AI now, the roles are going to change a little bit. Our processes have to evolve along with that. So I look for like people who can make sort of be flexible. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, Lori, welcome back there. And the only thing I would add is this is true even before kind of AI became a big topic of interviews. I look for values and principles, and really, and not everybody has them fully baked, but you should be able to articulate what matters to you when you're making a decision. We do like a sign exercise as part of our interview panel for designers. And it's not about, answering the like little exercise that we do on a whiteboard. It's about the kind of principles and framework and values that you apply to it. So when are you ready to use AI? When do you need to have more of a human human contact? If it's like a user experience, like is it okay to do a chatbot here, or would you rather want to connect somebody to support? What is the difference, and why did you make that decision? So we're listening for a value structure.
Okay, we have a question back here.
So Digan Dave, new product consultant. It seems like the current job market is really tilted towards specialization and specialists. Where do you sort of see the role of AI, and do you think the pendulum's going to swing back towards generalists who are, as the panelists said, like more flexible, adaptable?
I think it is going to swing a lot towards generalists because there are going to be like tweeners who are designers who are actually really good at product, and they'll start to, or engineers who can. So there are going to be more. I think roles that are a mix of a few different talents. I think it's really hard to know like how every org will go, but I think the way I look at it is, okay, there's like an 80-20 rule I apply. So there's 80% of most of our jobs is like busy work, and you have to like sort of fight through the stuff to get to the good bits. So if the AI can do a lot of the busy work, then what are you really sort of contributing? And there it may not, you have to probably like pick up a couple more things. So yeah, I do see more generalists, but I can't I can't know what it is. It just like feels like we need to be like jack of a few trades and a master of a few somewhere.
I'm only hiring journalists, so there's very few. There's not much room for specialists in the size of our organization. My group is about 20. I've got about 20 researchers and designers, and like we need them to be able to jump onto a lot of different types of projects. The only exception is we just hired a design system specialist. He's a special snowflake, and it took us a while to find him, but that was the kind of specialty that we needed.
We're seeing it swing already in product, I'd say, and a bit in technical roles. Not too much, but I think it's just to your point of just being able to like adapt to what's currently trending or what everyone is using, and being able to use it pretty quickly in your current role. But we are already seeing more genres being hired than before.
Hi, my name is Sharon. My question is, where do you see the role of the software developer in the US, considering it's so easy to generate code using, Gen AI, and also a lot of offshoring happening because it's a lot cheaper, for instance, to hire a developer in India or other regions, South America, for example. For example, my son is doing computer science. I studied computer science as well. I'm worried about his future as a software developer. So that's my question.
So we work with a lot of enterprise companies that at one point were hiring only in the US and then started hiring offshore. And there were actually US candidates that said, I'll move there, can you hire me there? And it was like a no. That was like 6 months ago. We've seen it come back to almost like 50-50 in the US and offshore, when it was like at one point 90% offshore for some pretty big logos. But to your point about the software developer, I mentioned that I use Replit. It took me 30 minutes to build something. It kept asking me which code to use, and I kept being like, I don't know, because I'm not an engineer. And so if I was an engineer, it would have taken 5 minutes probably, because I would have been able to answer those questions, right? So the role is just changing a bit, that you can build things faster, but you still have to have that like technical knowledge to do it. Like the invoice dashboard that I built isn't like wonderful. We wouldn't share it with customers. It was just like to prototype an idea I had for my lead engineer that he could like replicate, but I needed him to actually build it. And that, I don't know that may change maybe in 20, 25 years. But the develop, I don't know. Like maybe that's, yeah.
Like to your point, right? There's still a need for people to build stuff, but to your point about like outsourcing, actually the whole AI wave is in favor of more work happening in the United States. It's just that like how many engineers will be, like there's the classical joke, how many engineers do you need to screw on a light bulb? Now that the number of people that you need are fewer, communication is very hard when you have to work across geographies. Like, obviously, there are some companies that have succeeded, worked in companies that have both succeeded and failed, and I've worked in India, here, everywhere. And communication is really, really hard. So I think with the influx of a lot of these AI coding tools, I do see that more engineering will happen in the United States with the help of coding tools. But it's just the good engineers will still be in vogue. So the good software engineers will still be in vogue. But it is going to be challenging, and the market is going to be tighter.
It'll just be more competitive.
It'll be much more competitive.
I think one thing I'll just add to that really quickly is that I think that now there is an expectation that everybody become a full stack engineer and understand like every part of it, because the pieces that are simpler to kind of spin up are mostly front end. And of course, back end will get easier, but the reality is I don't think there's ever going to be, I mean, it was created by humans, so it sucks. So like, I do think that in that sense, there's an opportunity for people to upskill, not necessarily just give up.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sharifa Atkins. I own a fractional town advisory. I help startups scale their people teams aligned to culture. So I wanted to ask you, talk a little bit about culture, but if you could dive in a little deeper about how you weave that into your interview process, how important it is to you. Jen, I do have to say that I saw 2 resumes that I knew were AI because they were exactly the same. Like someone had, they had just, I was like, wow. But if you could talk a little bit about your culture for each of you.
Patreon is, well, actually Shopify was too. All of the companies I've worked at have been big on culture, but Patreon, because these 2 companies, Patreon and Shopify, are founder-led, and so, you know, Shopify is driven by an engineer from Germany, and like that really infiltrated the entire culture. Patreon is founded by a musician and YouTuber, and he's very, very passionate about getting creators paid, and that really is like a requirement to work at Patreon. You really have to represent those values. We have core values. We even have an interview process called the core value interview, where we're looking specifically for people who are aligned to build with craft, put the creator first. We have our kind of 5 core values. I can speak to like the way it shows up for my team and how I really try to bring it into the design team. When it comes to the way that we're approaching AI, we are all humanists. I guess maybe I'll start there. Like I don't struggle to stir up a lot of opinions from the design team. I think if anything, the design team is the first one to be very skeptical about some aspects of AI. I've got a lot of people on my team who love experimenting and playing with new tools, and anything that can generate new creativity is really exciting. But there is this real fear of like the human touch, craft, authenticity, like how does that actually come forward? So the way that I'm trying to make sure that we retain what is true to our team is we're constantly revisiting our principles. We have a set of principles that help us make decisions when we are designing. We use that language in our weekly crits. We use it when we are sharing work at an all hands, and we want to make sure the entire company is speaking a common language. And we like to do a lot of just sharing of interesting things that come up, the way that the industry is talking about AI, or the way that the industry is talking about new creators that are coming onto the market. We're constantly trying to refine the language, get a little bit sharper, a little bit tighter. And I try to encourage a lot of good, healthy debate within our team as well. We really want to make sure it's a team that feels like we can be vulnerable, we can be wrong. I've been more skeptical of AI at times than maybe some of the other folks on the exec team, and there's a lot of, like, we try to welcome that, because we're not really going to get it right until we just like discuss it, debate it, and really sharpen it.
The culture is at the core of like sort of what really matters for me as well. And I think the way I always look at it is like, you want to embrace change, and you want to do it in a sort of responsible way. You can't be too reckless, but you can't be too rigid, right? Like this, it's very hard, but there's a little bit of a balance. And I think, like you said, it's very important that teams and the individuals have the scope and the space to make mistakes, and I think we celebrate them. Like I think one of the things I try to do is like, when we instrument something and we really bomb, we talk about it and we say, hey, let's see, this is how we can learn and like get better. And I think creating like a little bit of that psychological safety that, our job is to run experiments and then learn quickly and then keep sort of trying more things is super important. I think sometimes what happens, like if your experiment is too big, then it's too hard to fail, right? It becomes sort of too. So I think the culture we try to at least develop is be ready to try more stuff, but then do it at a small scale, and then you learn. The bigger the scale, the harder it is to fail because obviously like there's a lot riding on it, right? So I think that is the hard thing, like to get that psychological safety. And to be honest, I think it has to come from the top down, and everybody has to like embrace that. Well, we did a thing, it didn't go as we wanted. So what did we learn? Because most of my career, I think like I almost learned nothing from success. Failure is what really teaches you stuff. Like that's what like tells you, and you really think about it and all that. So I think figuring out how to like make that a good thing is very important in the culture, because then I think people will like look for learnings from there. So yeah.
One quick tactical thing that you just reminded me of is when it comes to culture, I think it's really important if you're telling everybody to experiment with AI, that this is part of everybody's process. You have to also acknowledge that people are going to be less productive in some ways. Like we've all tried to write something with ChatGPT and gotten into a hole of like, all right, I should have just written this. This is now I'm like spun out on like 10 iterations and I don't remember what I was even writing about. So I think that's really important because there's a celebration of like, great, you used AI, but like some people are going to waste an afternoon trying a bunch of tools that just were not the right tool for what you're trying to do. So you need to make sure that that is allowed and celebrated as like, great, you experimented, you failed, let's go back to doing the work that you know how to do.
Well, thank you guys so much. My name is Jonathan. I'm from the World Economic Forum. So I had a question, actually, it was geared towards you, Jen, because I'm a huge fan of Patreon. I remember when Jack Conte gave this very famous TED Talk, and as a fellow musician, I remember watching it and being like, let's go, like, let's get creators paid. And I'm wondering, like, in this world of AI, what is the role of a self-starter? Like, is that still valued? Has that value changed? And do you see companies like really valuing entrepreneurs, or do you feel like there's been a change in that because of AI?
Yeah, it was actually that was part of the answer. I was thinking too, the question we had over here about software development and whether or not like that is a dying or what's going to happen there. I'm like, well, soft developers can spin up designs. AI is coming from the designers too. A soft developer can dream up a product that they want and really quickly have an interface and build the app, and not need a designer. The same way that a designer can use AI to generate a code for them. So I strongly believe in entrepreneurship coming from Shopify and now the creator economy. There's a lot of job opportunities there. I think I'm just answering with enthusiasm. Am I answering your question? Entrepreneurship. I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, and AI does allow you to do a lot more with a limited toolbox because the tools are just so good.
It's a good time to be a solo, actually, like someone who can start, because I think that it gives you enough tools to start, and it gives you enough, I think, ability to, like, when you hit a block, the AI can actually help you overcome the block. I use AI to help me with my book. And it helped me overcome writer's block because it's the other voice. So I'm a little bit crazy, but I have like a scribe and I have a critic AI. So whenever I wrote something and I'm not very happy about it, I'll pass it through the critic. And say, like, so there are ways in which you can use it to sort of like just move you off of a spot. So I do think that for solo, like usually like they say, right, like you need two starters, two founders because we have cycles and like the other. But here I think actually AI can become your second founder, so to speak, and actually like push you through. So that's some interesting ways to
I think we have time for 2 more questions. We have here and up there.
Hi, thanks for this conversation. My name is Lori Berenberg and I'm a product consultant as well. I have a question for you. Product, as a follow-up from the question before regarding specialist versus generalist. Product specifically has seen a lot of specialists in the last couple of years. Where do you see that going in terms of that trend? And then the second part to that question is, what are some of the trends that you see in the future roles for product?
So I've always been like a much more of a generalist hirer than a specialist hirer, because I think sometimes like product is about like good pattern matching and being able to see like industries, and like when you go from education to something else, you see what's similar, what's different, and sometimes what's different gives you the strength to actually make a change, right? So I think because every industry is like very sort of focused, right? So when you go from education to something else, something that was like a easy and like everybody knew the thing, like taxonomy, like you go in a different industry, people look at you like, oh, you're the best at something. So I think that actually is a big advantage so I always like to hire off from, and more people who can like sort of adapt their skills. Specifically to what's going to happen in the future, I'm sure you know, honestly. But I think a couple of things is that there's going to be more player coaches. I think more people have to be doers, less like managers. I think in product management, like, we talked about, I think we will have to take on more responsibility of like storytelling and like use the AI tools to become a designer for a bit and like maybe an engineer for a bit, just so that you can both tell a story. And I kind of use it also to make my engineers a little nervous sometimes. Like I'm like, you know what? So whenever I get like, hey, this is going to cost you an arm and a leg, I'll be like, all right, here's what I could do with that in like 15 minutes. So maybe, so it's a good bargaining chip a little bit to call BS sometimes. But I think, yeah, you have to just find what works for you, but just have to be willing to do more of the core work. And I think not being a manager of people.
We definitely see a rise in technical PMs, but not like true technical, like AI PMs that basically can build something to show to the engineering team to replicate. So I think as a product manager or designer, like anything you can do with AI is going to help you.
Any last question?
Thank you. Natalie Mishkina, I'm leading efforts of implementing and adopting and making sure that customers adopt AI tools in enterprise organizations. There's a lot of work to be done. I've been reflecting on the conversation we just had right now. And what I heard, just to summarize, there's the pipeline, again, like the competition will increase, pipeline will increase. In the meantime, you're saying that, again, generalists are in demand, so people will be generalists. You're saying hiring for culture. You're saying that soft skills becoming more important. In our era of AI, how do you differentiate? You'll get thousands of resumes of people who look the same, or again, like meeting all the criteria, but how do you choose right people? Like it's both on like, receiving side and like a supply side.
I mean, from a hiring perspective, like think about how many people you've personally recommended for a job, or if you were hiring, if somebody came to you through a referral or a warm intro, like you're more likely to interview them. So the tried and true way to stand out is to go through a connection. And so either you know someone or you reach out to 6 people at the company and one person replies and you get an interview. That's never going to go away. Like hiring is a human first business. Like you're not in the business of hiring AI agents, right? Like you're a human being, you're being hired, you're hiring. So you ultimately want to be introduced to the right people. So I would really leverage your network. Like LinkedIn is a great tool. There are so many other tools out there. Everyone has a profile. Everyone reads their DMs. They don't always reply, but they do read them. And so it's just a numbers game. Like if you message 100 people, maybe 5 will reply. And my advice is never ask for a job, always ask for advice. People love to talk about themselves. Tell them that you admire their career and their journey. Do they have 15 minutes to share their story with you? And that's how you sort of build your network.
I mean, I plus one to all of that. I think I'm trying to build teams that work well together, that can communicate and solve problems. We are going to have very, very powerful tools at our disposal, but we're still going to have to make decisions about, which solution is the right one, because a computer is going to generate several different potential solutions. Just as like an anecdote of what, I guess it was 15 years ago when I was in school, I worked for a research lab that was about smart cities. And the future was all about like sensor-enabled cities. Oh my gosh, the cities are going to be so optimized because we have so much technology. Our cities are like not that efficient. And we have the technology, but people are flawed. And which tools do we use and how do we fund them? And there will be, computing power won't be limitless. Like we will actually have to make some decisions about where budgets are allocated. Who gets this? It's not going to be equally distributed. So you need a clever, diverse team that comes from different backgrounds with different problem solving skill sets, different ways of communicating, the heads down people who want to crank away at a really gnarly problem, the charismatic storyteller who's really about getting everybody to work together. Like you still have to assemble that even with the super powerful tools at your disposal.
And I think that's actually a very important point. Like your uniqueness is your strength, and like the more you own it and the more I used to play Dungeons and Dragons, and it takes a totally different group of people that are different, put them together, and that's what sort of succeeds sometimes. Like if everybody's the same, it's not fun, and there's a lot more clash than sort of cooperation. So I do think that bringing those different talents together is important. But it is a hard job market we entering, so no doubt. I think Jen gave the best advice. Try super hard, just go send a million emails to people, and all you need is one opportunity, right? And I think that sometimes it's very disheartening to apply and not be selected. And the human nature is to feel some things about it. But if you just say that, well, this is how the world is, and just keep at it, and I think that all you need is one person to believe in you, and then the rest is history.
That is an inspiring note to end on. All it takes is one. To wrap us up, do you want to tell us a little bit about Twill?
Sure. Well, I think everyone here is qualified to be a Twill member because everyone has amazing backgrounds. But I would love to see a show of hands. Have you ever recommended someone for a job that you worked with? Were you paid for it? Were you paid above 10K for it? 20K? On Twill, you can be paid 5 to 25K for recommending people for jobs, which is significant income, I think, for anyone. And as a hiring manager, you're basically hiring from a pre-vetted, high-quality talent pool where folks like yourself have recommended their best boss or their best direct report. And I would love for all of you to apply, but we will reach out to you after this event as well, if you forget.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to do a quick group photo. I'm going to have the panelists stand in the back, and then you guys, if you just want to squeeze your chairs, just kind of hop them over a little bit. We're going to look like one big group. Yeah, behind the team. So everyone just stay seated. Yeah, guys, this one's everyone say cheese. All right. Cheese. All the angles. Yay, thank you.
Thank you all for joining. Bye.